Right guys, welcome back to the channel. Today, instead of Manning's Heath, you're joining me at King's Golf Studio in East Grinstead, an absolute golf nirvana. We've been here before and every time I come here, I'm very amazed. So if you guys are in the UK, definitely go check this place out. This place has a lot of launch monitors and studios, so I thought today I would compare a budget launch monitor, the very popular Garmin R10, against a TRACKMAN bay. TRACKMAN is very, very expensive. It comes in between 10 to 20,000 pounds. This Garmin R10, only about 500 pounds. So a big, big difference in price. But how big is the difference going to be in terms of performance? If you guys aren't familiar with TRACKMAN or the Garmin R10, the TRACKMAN is basically what all PGA Tour players use. We saw it at the Ryder Cup, we see it at every majors. It's a lot bigger, but it comes with a lot more data and it is probably the most accurate piece of equipment you guys can use. The Garmin R10 is a very new launch monitor. It's budget at £549 is the RRP. And you use it with your phone or your tablet and it gives you similar numbers in terms of the data, but it may not be as accurate. There clearly is a big difference in size. The Garmin R10 is about as big as my iPhone, whereas the TRACKMAN is a lot bigger, more like a tablet, more like an iPad. That would lead you to believe that there's a lot more technology involved in the TRACKMAN. That is the case, but let's test it out right now. Let's go shot for shot. I'm gonna move up, just hit some random shots, but then get a lot of data in there and see how different this Garmin R10 really is and if it's worth your guys' money. Let's do it. So I've got the Garmin set up at the exact place it should be, between 6 to 8 foot behind me. It's completely flat, so this should be the ideal conditions for it. TRACKMAN obviously is ideal everywhere, so especially here in King's Golf. Let's just hit a little lazy shot. So 104. Okay, so that's not a 100-yard shot, that's a 160-yard shot. And that's saying 77, 104, which is good. And then carry 137 to 160. Now what I've got, and I'll put this little Garmin from my phone up on the screen for you now, and instantly it's got 153 and 140. So its discrepancy there is by about 4 or 5 yards for the total distance, and carry distance is off by about 1.5. Big problem here though, you can see, is that deviation going 12 yards right. I've got this lined up completely straight and it's still saying it's going right. Now I know I didn't hit that right. I hit that a little thin and a little bit left, bang on here. If we're going into the actual details of this, attack angle is again a little bit wrong at -9. I wasn't -9, I'm not hacking down on it. It is at -5.4, which I think is pretty bang on. The club face isn't too wrong, but the face to path is wrong. Backspin slightly off by about 600 or 700 RPM. And then, yeah, so it's a little bit off. It's a little bit off of these. I'm gonna hit a few more of these type shots and see how big of a difference there is. Is this a consistent trend? It's not too bad, but I would hope it to be a little bit closer. Okay, so I've hit a few more and the trend seems pretty consistent for what the Garmin is off by. So I moved it about just a little bit to make sure it was completely straight, and it has made the deviation a little bit better, but it's still a little bit off. It's still going just a little bit, it's saying it's going right when it's not, it's going left. But then the total distance is what I'm actually most impressed by, because it looks to be pretty bang on within, let's say, a plus or minus 2 yards. For instance, here that last shot was 133. As you can see on the screen now, it is 135. But the big problem is when you go actually into your data. For instance, if you're practicing back home. For instance, let's look at this one. So 3,400 spin, it wasn't that. Look at this one, 4,400. Previously, when I was getting the other way around, so it was getting, let's say, 4,500 spin, but then it was going to 6,000 spin with the Garmin, the spin's a little bit all over the place, and I think that could be tied down to, it doesn't really pick up if you have a good strike or a bad strike with it, because I did hit one a little bit on the toe, a little bit thin, and they were kind of getting the same results, whereas the TRACKMAN, it wasn't. The attack angle always does seem to be a little bit off too. It always seems like if I've got, let's say, -4.6 here, it makes it even steeper, so like -7 or -8. That's a consistent trend that I'm getting so far, which isn't great. And I'm not going to try and criticize the Garmin R10 because I still think it's a very good product. But what I can see right now is that it's not as accurate as it should be, in all honesty. I think it should be a little bit more accurate just from these readings so far. I'm hitting little pitch shots. I will now go towards a full 7-iron and see what the difference is. Although it's good for initial data for the yardage, for the total yardage, for 550 pounds, you're going to want a little bit more than that. You're going to want something that gives you accurate carry, total, spin rate, and a little bit more. So far it's a bit disappointing. I've seen a lot of comments saying that maybe when it's inside it's actually worse, but I'm struggling to see why, because I'm at the literal perfect place for a launch monitor. I would think the Garmin should perform very well. I'm going to move on to a full 6-iron now and see what the differences are. That was rubbish. Oh, God. Look at that deviation for that one. I'm not going to get into the data just yet. 26 yards right, and that's got a nice little high draw. Dear, oh dear. Yeah, those numbers are way off. I'm hitting it well. But look at that, look at that. All right, let's stop the testing for 1 second. Put the Garmin up on the screen. That discrepancy there is too much not to talk about. 41 yards right is what it's saying on this here. It's got okay numbers in terms of the total distance and carry. It is off by about a club, but 41 yards right with spin going at 4466 rather than 6040. The only thing that for me is looking pretty bang on here is the attack angle, which is great, and the club face isn't too bad either. I've had good success with the Garmin for certain parts when testing it, but it just seems a little bit too inconsistent. Right, I've hit enough, I think, here to give just some feedback about the full shots. It does seem like today, the Garmin is just recognizing all shots going right. Now, that's not that much of a problem for practice, but if it was something that would consistently happen every single session, it wouldn't be a positive thing at all. I'm laying this completely flat. As I've said before, it is the perfect session for a Garmin R10 here, yet it's not registering it as the correct flight. I do play a draw, usually it could be a hook, and every shot I've hit so far, I know it's been a draw. Every shot on the Garmin, it's been a wipey fade. Now, with a wipey fade, you may think it was going 30, 40 yards right, you'd lose some distance. I'm not losing any distance on this. So again, that's not really adding up. Bit confusing, but the actual total distance is, again, similar to those pitch shots I did with the 7-iron. Pretty bang on, pretty consistent actually. With those carry distance and total distance, it's got a variance of, let's say, 5 to 8 yards for the Garmin in comparison to the TRACKMAN, which isn't too bad. It's enough to get some decent data for, and I'm not going to give any sort of negative criticism for that, because I think that's pretty much how it should be. But then we go into other data, as I said, I can put it on the screen for you now. With spin fluctuating on and off, it wasn't actually as bad for this one here. The spin was actually okay. It was fluctuating by about plus or minus 1,000 RPM. But that's still not great, is it? That's still not great for a 6-iron, because you're wanting to get around 6,000 RPM for a 6-iron. And if this is giving you off numbers, if you're practicing in the winter, and if you're looking into that, you will then think, I've got to make a change. What I'm really interested by is the driver, the big stick, the one where I'm going to be swinging at 120 miles an hour. Let's jump over to that now and see if the Garmin can keep up. So I think this one's going to be a fun test. God, I'm so slow now. I used to be so much quicker. Okay. First one is a wide and out of bounds, whatever you want to call it. And it's actually got it pretty decent. The carry distance again is a little bit off, but the flight is pretty similar for the first time ever at this session. Flight going with a kind of pull draw, going at 294 on the Garmin and 289.7 on the TRACKMAN, which isn't too bad. Spin, spin doing okay as well at 2,300 on the Garmin and 2,100, which is a bit better. Attack angle I think is pretty different though, at plus 9.5 and it's at 3.7 on the TRACKMAN. So a little bit different, but to be honest, so far that's the best as to what we've had. I think the driver out of that shot, that's the best performance I've seen in terms of the difference between the TRACKMAN and the Garmin. Let's keep going. That was a better swing. Really good numbers. Spin's a bit low. But that's gone 280 carry, 172 ball speed, and going to 320 on the TRACKMAN. And, hello, we've got another good comparison here. The carry is slightly different. Again, a little bit hefty on the Garmin at 300 rather than 282. But the total distance there at 319, comparing that to 317, and with a similar flight too, that's very good. Now, looking at the spin, a little bit different, but nothing that I would be too angry by here. They are pretty similar numbers, so weirdly enough, the club that I thought would have the most discrepancies, the most errors, I guess, for the Garmin, is performing the best. That was bad. Spin's so low. All right, stop the clock here. We've had another inconsistency. That was actually a really good swing. I'm testing out some golf balls as well while doing this. So spin's a bit high on that one, but now I'm picking it up and going to about 120 in my club head speed. Decent enough strike, but the ball I was using was a little bit too spinny. So that one only went to 298 on the Garmin. I don't know what happened, but it's saying I duck hooked it at 50 yards left and it only went 275, which didn't happen. So the inconsistency is my only worry here. It's not enough of a problem where I'm going to absolutely rip this device to pieces, but it is a big talking point. Square it up enough. That's right. Right guys, so I have hit a lot of balls now comparing the TRACKMAN and the Garmin R10, so that brings me to the end of this video where I give my final thoughts. As you can see throughout this video, there is quite a significant difference between the Garmin R10 and the TRACKMAN, and that's also shown in the price. With the TRACKMAN being, what, 20K or so, and with this being 2.5% of that, £500, to really expect the same data would be a little bit silly, and I did kind of come into this expecting exactly the same data. Yes, I know TRACKMAN has a lot more to offer with the courses and everything, and you can just make your own like golf dungeon at home, but I was expecting slightly similar results, especially for kind of those base data settings, the spin rate, the attack angle, the ones that are quite important. So I was a little bit disappointed, but after taking some time and really thinking about it a little bit more, I think Garmin R10 is still a decent product, but perhaps because it is the first launch monitor of this caliber that Garmin have released, there's always going to be some teething pains, some problems right when it starts. So now thinking about it, I'm not too surprised. And for what it offers, it does offer some good total distance. You can get some good club speed and ball speed. That's not too bad. But I would like to see perhaps some firmware improvements, some software improvements that maybe does improve the overall data accuracy of this. Because if you were thinking, I want to get a Garmin R10 and see, let's say, improve yourself throughout the winter, practice your swing, this still can do that, but I think there's only so far that it can go. You can't really test out, let's say, clubs with this. If I were to test my Cobra Rad speed against the TaylorMade Sim 2, I wouldn't think this would be the most accurate test because the data I was getting, or would be getting, would not be that consistent. Let me know down in the comments what you think of this test. I think it is very interesting to compare something that provides the same results in terms of data, but completely different actual price brackets. What, £20,000, £500? If you guys have enjoyed this video today, leave a like down below. And if you guys are new to the GolfMagic YouTube page, hit the subscribe button too to keep up to date with all of our videos, from comparisons, you name it, we've got it to keep you guys entertained for all of 2021. I will see you guys at the next video.